Thank you for joining The Ones Changing the World, India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted, honored to have with me Mr. Srikanth Nadhamuni, who's an investor, technologist, and an entrepreneur. Ex Sun Microsystems, Intel Corporation, Silicon Graphics, and WebMD, with experience in the areas of CPU, design, healthcare, national ID, banking, and financial services. Srikanth was the founder CTO of Aadhaar, was on the board of SDFC Bank, and is currently CEO of Khosla Labs, a startup incubator that he co-founded with Vinod Khosla, and chairman of Trustt, a digital banking software as a service company. He's also the managing trustee of the E-Governments Foundation, which he co-founded with Nandan Nilekani. It focuses on improving governance and public service delivery in Indian cities using a suite of municipal ERP products. During COVID, Srikanth founded the 10BedICU project to create ICUs in government hospitals in smaller towns and villages. 10BedICU has created over 200 10-bed ICUs in 8 states in less than 2 years. So Srikanth, really appreciate you taking time being part of the podcast. It will be great if you could start with your journey, your background in Silicon Valley, and what kind of motivated your move in the transition from working on cutting edge technologies to applying technology for social impact in India.
Okay, well, Eddie, wonderful to be here. Delighted to be part of your podcast. Well, we spent about maybe 14 years in the Silicon Valley in California. But all along the way, Sunita, my wife, and I, we were part of this group called the Indians for Collective Action, which was basically funding a lot of good work in India, NGOs across the country that was working on sustainable rural development, gender issues, and so on in many facets. And we had funded literally hundreds of projects in, like 16 or 20 states, 16 to 17 states, if I remember it correctly. And so we were very plugged into India, even though we were in the United States, we were in California. And frankly, we felt that, working on development issues in India was actually important and transformational than making CPUs go a little faster, which seemed sort of marginal and incremental improvement over what was already there. I guess there was also, a bit of a guilt factor. I mean, you are in one of the most affluent and technologically advanced areas of the world, Silicon Valley, California. And we come from middle-class backgrounds in India, and we have seen the difficulties that people face. And so there's a little bit of, we shouldn't be sitting here forever. We should go back and use our talents and resources to try and improve things back home. So that was also an aspect. And there was also our kids. My son was 6, my daughter was 2 when we moved back. We were very keen that they got a sort of a middle-class education, sort of grounded, value-based education in India, which we all grew up with and we were delighted with. So those were the reasons why we moved back.
Indians are so glad that, people such as yourself had taken the decision to kind of move to India and create so much social impact, which is needed. Like you said, India is a country with, I think, the largest population in the world. It's so dynamic. There's so much happening over here. And I think we are poised for greatness. And I guess, with supports such as, ecosystems such as Indians for Collective Action, I think it's going to add to the dynamic of the growth of, the trajectory that we are on. So I hope that there's more people such as yourself who take that move and come to India, because, there is so much challenges as well as so many opportunities over here, wherein it looks like, the challenges and the opportunities seems to have exhausted in those like developed countries. I wouldn't say exhausted, but not as many as India. So
yeah, well, actually, let me add to that. I don't want to make it sound like, there was so much need here and we were able to come and help out. India is incredibly exciting. It is, I think, the epicenter of innovation right now. There is such interesting work going on whether it was on identity like Aadhaar or payments, the way UPI is going, and the way we have taken to digital public goods and digital public infrastructure creation across the country and delivering it to 1 billion people, not just for exclusive groups. I think that is where India is shining and really doing well. And so, in that sense, I don't think it's a huge sacrifice, if you will, for people to move here and work here, because this is where it's all happening. This is the place where the creative juices are flowing.
Completely W. So I've been invested in the AR/VR industry since early 2016. We had developed India's first virtual reality camera. When Google, Facebook were developing the stereoscopic VR camera, we had built our own virtual reality camera, and the intention was to kind of take it to the market. But then hardware was like a really, really challenging market back then, and I think it's pretty much the same right now also. But the opposite side is that the software industry is completely evolved, and it's like we are like the spawning, if you might say. These software engineers, and across all verticals, be it artificial intelligence, be it AR, VR, MR, be it quantum computing. In fact, I was having a conversation with the head of IBM Quantum Computing India, and he was saying that how we are leading. India is leading when it comes to quantum computing engineers. But that doesn't seem to be the story when it comes to hardware. What do you think, can be done, to maybe...
I do come from the chip design industry in the Silicon Valley, and so I'm sort of aware of it. You have to sort of understand what goes into creating, let's say, a CPU. It's an incredible effort. I remember my teams at Sun Microsystems when we were building one of the first few Spark chips. It's 300 people, 300 CPU designers working at incredible detail, right? There are a few nanometers. It's so tiny, and we're putting like 5 billion transistors. I don't know what the number is right now. It might be much, much higher. And making sure that that works is an incredible feat of engineering, right? So it requires a level of sophistication and investment, which is enormous, right? So maybe historically, when I look at India's trend in the world of technology, historically, it needed large investments, and maybe the industry here was not ready to make those kind of very large investments in chip design or semiconductor or electronics manufacturing and so on. And maybe even we did not have a concerted policy on this space to develop semiconductor or the electronics industry. So even from whether it was an industry perspective, because the investments needed were large, or even from a policy perspective, we didn't take it very seriously, this area. And, this is not what, in the software industry, one or two founders in a garage can actually go create a product, okay, with hardly any investment, right? You can create something really good with just your innovative ideas and creative juices. You can create something of value, and then maybe you can attract investments and go on. Unfortunately, that's not the case in hardware. First of all, you need a lot of talent, experienced people. If you're going to design something of enormous value or innovation, and you need huge investments to go in, and the risks are very high, especially in an industry where we have not had a lot of track record. Even the VCs probably don't look at investing in large hardware projects in India because there's not a whole lot of track record and maturity in that system. So maybe all of these contributed to us not, playing the catch-up game on hardware as opposed to software where we have done so well.
You mentioned the risks are high, but there's also the saying that, higher the risk, higher the rewards, So I hope that, India kind of catches up with the hardware space also. So you mentioned about the opportunity, the people in India, 1.4 billion people. There's the largest populated country in the world. So it comes with the demographic dividend, the youth populations, so on and so forth. So that's very cool. But also it comes with the chaosness, because the population, managing them becomes really a problematic. So governance comes with a lot of challenges. It's not as easy. And so in India, we have seen, in the governance space, we still have, corruption. We've got black money. We've got political unaccountability. We also have now a little bit of divisive politics. We've got infrastructure deficit and inequality. You have been you co-founded or incepted e-governance. So how do you think e-governance is going to play a role in maybe solving all of these problems? And also maybe it'll be great if you could narrate the story of how you met Mr. Nilekani and how this e-governance came into.
We decided in 2002 to move back to India. My wife and I decided, and along with the two kids, we moved back to India. And our goal was to work in the development sector. Because we were working, we were part of this Indians for Collective Action, and we had sort of understood some of the work that's going on and challenges the country was faced with. We grew up here. So when we came back, we were very keen to sort of sink into problems that are related to the larger society and community and work on, larger scale problems. And then we met up Nandan Nilekani at a BATF meeting. Okay, the Bangalore Agenda Task Force was a government order by the Krishna government, who was the then chief minister, to Nandan to try and improve Bangalore. And he had brought at a auditorium here at NIMANS, he had brought all the stakeholders of the city, the BBMP, the BMP at that time, the municipality, the BESCOM, the electricity department, BWSSP, the water department, BDA, the development authority. The heads of all these agencies were sitting in an auditorium with him and actually putting PowerPoint slides of what they're going to do and what their targets were for improving their various organizations and service delivery to the people. So we were very impressed with Nandan's approach of this sort of inclusive approach of getting the stakeholders of the city and openly discussing and setting timelines and presentations on how to do it. This seemed like a very modern way of improving systems. And we really liked it. And we went up to Nandan and spoke to him and said, we are here from the United States and we're here to try and see if we can help in some way. And also what had happened was I had met the commissioner of Bangalore, Mr. Srinivas Murthy, and offered him my services. I said, I'm a technologist from Silicon Valley. I'm here to try and focus on development areas. If you need help on technology for the city of Bangalore, municipality of Bangalore, I'm here to help. He still reminds me of me barging into his office one day. This was some 20 years ago. And so I had a sense that we have to work in the local bodies, that is the municipalities, because the citizen is directly affected by what the municipality does or doesn't do. It's not as affected by the state or even, the center. It's affected on larger, national security issues or whatever, or policy issues and so on. But at the day-to-day level, it's the city and the local body that really matters to the citizen. And so I met the commissioner of Bangalore and said, okay, can I help you? And he had said, okay, can you build me a property tax system? Because we've been trying to digitize this. And for 10 years, we've been trying and it hasn't worked and so on. So I had gotten involved starting design this. And I shared this with Nandan, saying, Nandan, here are my thoughts. And I'm thinking of building this system and see if we can structure it in a way that can scale. And immediately we hit it off. And we had a meeting, Nandan and I, and it was really exciting because we were both talking the same language. I guess both of us had come from a mindset of, technology can help in solving some of these governance issues in cities and so on. Even large cities like Bangalore, where 10 million people, were not using technology. Even tiny startups will have an accounting package to manage their financial accounting, or CRM to manage their customers and so on. Whereas the massive city of 10 million people was not using a digital, technology-based financial system. They were doing it on leather-bound books. right? So it was meeting of the minds, and Nandan and I still remember the meeting we had over lunch, and we just decided let's build a platform that can be used by all cities in India. And I remember Nandan saying, "Okay, I want you to be the Linux stalwarts of e-governance and build an open source system that everybody can use." And I was running a company at that time called Globe Trades Inc. out of California, and there was a team here in Bangalore. And so that entire team became eGovernments Foundation. We donated all the equipment, and all the people, employees, became part of an NGO. Nandan gave us a grant, funded it. So between all this, we had created an entity. This was 20 years ago. Now eGovernments is doing a phenomenal job. It's in many countries. It's in 14 countries. It's some 2,000 cities are impacted by its work, and its digital platform is doing incredibly well for managing cities, for financial accounting, for public finance, healthcare related, and so on.
The entire, I think, the India digital stack, I think, is completely changed India. I think personally, I feel that two pivotal moments for India's the economic growth has got to be India's digital stack plus Geo giving the cheap internet and cheap phones. Because that democratized knowledge, what it did was that through those, very cheap Wi-Fi, like knowledge which was only meant for the elites was distributed amongst the maids and the drivers across all sectors and class, and that I think catapulted India along with the India digital stack into this current space that we are, where we are known as like the leaders, almost the global leaders, the next global leaders, So thank you from, I think, from everyone to, driving this conversation of eGov, and then, obviously Aadhaar, which you've been, instrumental with, So you are the founder, CTO of Aadhaar, India's biometric identity system. What was the inception? What was the idea came of it? And can you kind of walk us through like the challenges from the development to the deployment of Aadhaar?
Aadhaar was a very important idea of a, public infrastructure of identity that can move the country forward. So we needed ways of proving who we were as the people started moving across the country. And the opportunities, of course, were in cities. 67% of India lives in its villages, and agriculture today accounts for still more than 50% of our labor force is in agriculture. Obviously, but the GDP is 2/3 is coming from cities, and obviously that will mean disparity, right? And so more and more people move to cities for looking for jobs and better prospects and so on. And when you do that, if you can't prove your identity, it's a huge blocker. In the past, maybe 50 years ago, people probably stayed put in their village and it was okay. And people lived in their localities. So even the banker knew who you were between the passbook and your face. You would be like, okay, I know this person and so on. Whereas those forms of identity broke down in the new world as there was mobility. So it was very important to create a digital identity that can be online verified and said, you are Eddie and there is no doubt in my mind and so on. Okay. And especially electronically, when you log in, we still have to figure out that you are indeed Eddie when you say, hey, send my money out to somebody else. We need to know it is you who are saying it. Otherwise, we will have a breakdown of our financial systems, right? So Aadhaar was super important to create for those many reasons, whether it is banking or payments or voting or whatever. So many aspects can be done in a proper way with much more assurance and security, right? Of course, building of Aadhaar was incredibly challenging. It is probably the most challenging thing I have ever done in my life, building it out. The experts told us this is impossible to do. What you're trying to do with biometrics for 1 billion people is important. Nobody's ever tried it. Okay, the experts in the US, especially, who had done very large-scale systems on biometrics, were saying this is, you'll need 6 football fields worth of hardware servers to try this, and your error margins will shoot up. And in fact, there was an article, I think, from a person in the London School of Economics, if I'm not mistaken, who said India will drown in a sea of false positives. Because, as you keep enrolling more and more people, it's more likely that our fingerprints will look similar. Multiple people might have fingerprints that look similar as you keep adding more and more people in the database. So you'll have false positives. People will think I am you and so on because our fingerprints look slightly alike. So there was a big article that he had written about how we will drown in a sea of false positives, right? Of course, we had a very smart team and we had thought through all of these issues and we had figured out how to handle that through, by trading off some error margins and so on. I don't want to go into the technical details of how we did it, but we had an incredibly smart team. It is probably one of the smartest team in the planet that came together. We had the likes of Pramod Verma, the chief architect here at the Technology Center. We had Vivek Raghavan, who knew nothing about biometrics when he came in, and I made him the biometrics czar, and he turned out to be one of the most brilliant guys who did so much for the project. Jagdish Babu was on devices and testing, and Sanjay Jain was on product management and so on. Some of the smartest people. Raj Mashruwala, the co-founder of Tibco, moved here from his beautiful house, which is a national monument in the US. It's Edgar Hoover's brother's house in Palo Alto, across from Stanford. And he came here and lived for 18 months in this E403 overlooking a construction site and worked with us in the trenches. So we had the smartest team in the planet, which had come together. Technology challenges were enormous. When we have 1 billion people in the database and a new person comes in, we have to literally do 1,000 trillion biometric matches every day because 1 million people are coming in to enroll every day. Actually, we do 12,000 trillion biometric matches because there's 10 fingers, 2 irises. So it's an enormous compute problem and massive storage. We have to keep track of so many things. So, of course, it was a huge technology problem, and ensure that the error rates were within the margin and ensure that we would indeed be unique across the entire nation. So it was a huge technology problem. And as in all systems, we have to keep refactoring the code because this thing has to keep scaling. Every time you're an order of magnitude larger, you go from 10,000 to 100,000 to, and so on, 1 million to 10 million to 100. And India keeps growing. It's a massive country. So you have to keep refactoring the code. It's like changing a engine on a flying plane, and you have to keep flying. You can't say, okay, I stopped 3 months and I'm going to upgrade my code. You have to keep going. So it was very, very challenging, the technology bit. But we had a brilliant team that came through in a phenomenal way. We were ahead of schedule on a government project, which is sort of unheard of. Of course, we had to build horizontal scalable systems because we couldn't do with normal, get a big database and get some big supercomputer and problem is done. No, it won't be done. Those vertical scalable systems would have crashed. So we had to build horizontal scalability, ensure that we can elegantly sort of scale this problem into blade servers, which were commodity blades with commodity sort of platforms. And not specialized supercomputer kind of architectures wouldn't have scaled horizontally. So a lot of technical challenges in order to get it done. Of course, there were ecosystem challenges as well. India is such a large country. Unlike in small countries, you can't just set up shop everywhere saying, okay, we have an office and everybody land up there and we'll get it done. Aadhaar, we realized it has to be a massive ecosystem. So we had the concept of registrars, which were state governments, which were banks, which were LIC and other entities, which would register people on behalf of Aadhaar. So we had come up with standards for all of them. We had to give them the software, which worked in 16 different languages. And then those enrolling agencies would those registrars would procure enrolling agencies, which we had empaneled, again, standardized and empaneled enrolling agencies, some 100 of them. And they would go and actually do the enrollment from private sector. They would invest their own money and then get paid. So we moved it from government doing the CapEx to government doing OpEx to moving to an OpEx model, where these private companies had to invest in the CapEx, but then they would make money as the government paid them as they enrolled people. And so in some sense, we got more companies in a distributed manner being stakeholders of high quality enrollments. Okay. And we could always reject that the quality was not good or it was not correct and so on. So a whole ecosystem was built of registrars, of enrolling agencies, of operators who were trained, okay, and they, and certified, the whole certification mechanism for this device ecosystem. We had to come up with standards. We said, India, we have our own standards on biometric devices. Anybody from around the world who wants to participate in this tender has to comply with our standards. And we set up a lab in Mohali for a CPI lab for certification of devices. Suddenly the prices crashed for the enrollment centers. It used to cost 4 lakhs, came down to 1 lakh. Why? Because the whole world came to compete. And they competed on our terms, on our standards, right? So all of these were like really intelligent ways to ensure that we get the best products in the world for Aadhaar, but also they competed fiercely and gave us the best, pricing. And then on the authentication side as well, authentication and KYC side, a whole ecosystem was built. AUA, KUA agencies, authentication devices, low-cost devices, registered devices to ensure security and privacy. So these ecosystems were complex to build. You're building an entire industry around Aadhaar so that each person does their little part and the whole puzzle gets filled with quality pieces coming together. Standards had to be developed, device standards, enrollment software standards, middleware standards, so multiple biometric agencies could plug in at the back end. We were not satisfied with one high-quality company doing biometrics at the back end. We had 3. How do you make 3 of them work at the backend server in a common way? So we had to build middleware standards. So India developed standards. Now they're all become global standards. Many, many countries, Indonesia and others, just downloaded our standards, which we had put up on the website, on the UIDAI website, and said, this is our standard, because the industry had already complied with it, the whole biometric industry and devices industry and so on. So we had challenges on many, many, many fronts, okay? But if you have a incredibly bright team and Nandan leading it, bringing 2 different the government on one side and private sector on the other, it was basically his brilliance that sort of made all this work. Wow. Get the sort of cultures, 2 different cultures together to work on the problem, to set a problem so challenging that, everybody dropped their own egos and ways of working and came together and got the job done.
How awesome is that? And it's like a dream come true for any techie to be part of, this.
Absolutely.
And kind of put it together. When you put it together and you're like, oh wow, you made it happen. So kudos to you and the entire team for making this happen. Now that's the physical world, and then the world is being digitized like really, really fast. Everything is being digitized, and post-COVID, we saw that, like movement of sorts, from like people moving from physical work to digital work, we today have virtual healthcare, virtual school. In fact, my son's in a virtual school. And I think if you see the young kids, they're largely in the virtual worlds, they spend more time interacting in these virtual platforms such as Roblox and Minecraft. And, then there are these companies such as Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, Sony. I think you name it, almost all Apple, the largest companies in the world are building virtual worlds, metaverses, spatial computing, or the names that they call it. Over there also, I think the identity problem is a big thing.
Huge.
Do you think that the infra that you created in the physical world could kind of translate over there? Because I think some of the largest companies in the world are trying to solve that problem. And then you mentioned about building these open source platforms. There have been pros and cons of building open source versus closed source. And so could you kind of first maybe also while you shared your experience on whether these correlate, translate your physical UIDs that you built which could work in the digital world, as well as the explain open source and its impact, open source versus closed source.
So interestingly, I just co-authored a paper that came out about a month ago on something called personhood credentials. Okay. Aadhaar kind of identity is becoming even more important than when we developed it 15 years ago because of AI. AI, while it is amazing in its capability and what it can do, it also can be used by bad actors, okay, for malicious purposes, right? So we are seeing deepfakes coming in on, people are using kids' voice and, asking for ransom money and so on and so forth that we have already heard of. We have seen all those videos of Trump and Kamala Harris and so on, fakes that are coming out. There's imagery that's being generated of people and so on. So these fakes are going to destabilize the trust we have built in our systems, especially digital systems. Okay. The ways we used to authenticate people, the ways we used to verify people, the way we used to do KYC of people and so on, they're all going to get compromised. Okay. So what is the role of the identity systems in this new world? What can an Aadhaar-like system do? Thankfully, it can do quite a bit. Okay. We had not anticipated generative AI, but thankfully, the direction in which Aadhaar went can actually help in the era of AI deepfakes. Okay. This whole paper that I've co-authored along with contributors from researchers from Harvard and Stanford and UC Berkeley and MIT and OpenAI and Microsoft and a whole bunch of other contributors from other institutions also. It just came out about a month ago called Personhood Credentials. This is about how do you prove that you're human when there's going to be all these deepfakes created by bots. Okay, and especially with agentic frameworks, it will seem convincingly true. I mean, you will be convinced that on the other side of the line is a human being talking to you. Bots can break CAPTCHA. They can break a lot of kind of puzzles that we used to. Where are the fire hydrants? Where are the buses? And all of those are broken already, right? So how do you distinguish human being from a bot? Okay, an AI-based bot is going to be increasingly hard. Already a lot of these are CAPTCHA and all these images and garbled letters, they're all compromised already by AI. They're able to break it. So what do we rely on? Who do we trust? Okay, how do we know that the other side is not an AI bot which is talking to you or whatever, telling you things and so on? And if I have attack vectors on banking, a lot of cybersecurity attacks, you probably heard of, in payments, and they prey on older people and take their OTP and do all those things. Imagine there I have to put people to do it and I have to train them to do these malicious things. Now imagine if I have 1 million bots doing this across the country. Okay. This is the scale of what could happen when you erode trust on digital systems, on internet systems. So we have to get prepared. Thankfully, this paper deals with this. This talks about how do you prove you're human? Okay. So if I'm having this conversation in the future, Eddie, I might say, okay, verify that you're human, Eddie, and then only I will talk to you. Okay. And you might do the same with me and then go, okay, you're both verified. And I might see a seal that says, Aadhaar verified that Eddie is a human. Eddie Avil is a human. And you probably see the similar thing. You might see a different seal. Okay. Maybe I'm coming from the US or whatever. Okay. There might be different systems proving personhood. And we might say, okay, good. I'm indeed talking to Eddie and not a avatar of Eddie that been put up or whatever. Right. Who knows? Maybe you might put it up. Somebody else might put it up. How do you know? Right. So the identity, the way we defined it, especially using biometrics, we know you're a human being if you got an Aadhaar. Okay, it's next to impossible for a bot to get an Aadhaar or a dog or a cat to get an Aadhaar. Personhood credentials talks about how do we establish personhood, okay, of a human being such that we can differentiate and say, no, I'm a true human being, and I'm not a AI bot, right? Aadhaar can do that quite easily, because we have taken fingerprints of the fingerprints and iris and photo of the face, and there are usage patterns to show that you've actually your patterns show that you're definitely a human being. Okay, there is no doubt about it. So in that sense, we are a little better prepared, if you will, as a country to handle this new world of AI, which, when used by malicious actors, can create distrust in the systems. And when you have distrust in digital systems, all things digital get impacted. Payments get impacted, banking gets impacted, pensions get impacted, everything gets impacted because you can't trust that system anymore. There might be a million bots trying to sway your opinion if it's an election, trying to take your money if it is payments, and so on and so forth, right? So that's the good news is we are a little ahead in the game on identity. We have spent 15 years thinking about identity. We have built one of the most sophisticated systems of identity in the world. India is using identity. 80 million transactions a day are taking place on Aadhaar. Okay, so this is no small joke. This is not something that is like a pilot that's being tested. This has been working at scale, at India scale, for the common man now for a long time, right? So I think we are a good foundation to deal with identity-related attacks that are very likely to come up in the future. Since we have learned so much about identity and how to create a digital public infrastructure for identity like Aadhaar, we are teaching a lot of countries how to do it, right? In fact, the G20 was all about, sort of DPI and how do we get these other countries to benefit from our learning and our experience and our systems. So we have created digital public goods as well. MOSIP is a digital public good on identity. It's learned from Aadhaar and built a open source system called MOSIP. And now there's some 14 or 15 countries that are implementing MOSIP, that are implementing an Aadhaar-like system, right? So our understanding of identity, our experience with creating and running such a system at such a large scale is helping a lot of other countries as well. Right. So that's on the identity piece. Now, the other question you asked, somewhat related, is on open source and proprietary systems. When we started building Aadhaar, there were any number of companies sort of advising us, you just need 600 database servers and this many transaction servers and that many whatever biometric measures, and this will be done, and just put out an RFP and some company will come up with a proprietary technology and be able to solve the problem. I made an impassioned plea to both Nandan and Ramsevak Sharma at one of the very first meetings and said, we will build the technology. We will build it in-house because nobody can build it as well as we can. And we understand the problem really well of our country. And it was one of the first times where a massive project that was transformational across the entire country was being given to build internally by the government, as opposed to putting out an RFP and saying, okay, everybody bid, 10 fingerprints, 2 irises, 1 face photo, name, address, gender, date of birth, you give us IDs. That's the requirement, right? We didn't do that. We actually built it in-house. In doing that, we made a very conscious decision that we would use open source all the way. Okay? It ran on Linux. It ran on commodity hardware. That means, Linux running, maybe Intel processors on blade servers that any number of companies could provide us. We ran on MySQL, open source database. We ran on MongoDB. We ran on RabbitMQ. So if you look at the entire stack, it was running using Java. Okay, all of it was developed on Java. So what I'm trying to say is we built it on open source. Not because, open source is cheap and it's free, okay? That's not the key reason why you go to open source. You build more secure systems in open source. You build more scalable systems in open source. Of course, we had enterprise versions and maintenance contracts even on these open source systems because we needed to build very robust systems for the country, okay? So we had to ensure that those systems were robust, but they were all open source. If you're looking at security, for instance, okay, if you're not using a well-known, globally known, open source encryption method, okay, if you're using a proprietary lock to keep your data secure, you don't know when you've gotten compromised, okay? The thief might be inside your house and you will not know. Okay, for years you might not know while they keep stealing your data and your information, right? Whereas when you use open source systems, if there is somebody breaks a cryptographic algorithm that is supposedly strong right now, the whole world knows about it. Okay, immediately you patch it, you change it, you improve it, and you move on, right? That's the advantage of open source. When millions and millions of people use these systems, compromises, weaknesses, bugs, they come to the fore very fast. You think you have a proprietary system and hence you're safe because only one guy knows how it works. You are unsafe because when it gets broken, nobody knows that it's been broken, right? And you're probably compromised already. So there are very foundationally strong technical reasons why we went open source. Okay, often people think, you saved a little bit of money. Yeah, I think India as a country has enough money to buy systems. That's not a problem at all. But it's about being smart about building systems that are robust, that are resilient, that maintain privacy, that maintain security. So open source systems have those properties. Of course, you might not get the kind of support if you just downloaded a product and used it, like sometimes the proprietary systems. Hence, you buy enterprise support. There is enterprise support for MySQL. We had enterprise support. We had enterprise support for Linux. I forget what, I think Red Hat or whatever we used at that time. We had enterprise support for that. So it wasn't as though we, willy-nilly said, let's download something and use it, because this is a national project of huge importance. These were well-designed systems, highly secure, with full contracts, maintenance contracts, and help if needed, when we had issues and so on. And I think we made a good decision on that, on the open source as opposed to proprietary.
Thank you, Srikanth, for explaining so beautifully the pros of an open source system and building an open source application. You partnered with Vinod Khosla and founded the Khosla Labs. Can you talk a little bit about Khosla Labs? And do you also accept deep tech startups? Since I've been driving the conversation about future tech and deep tech through this podcast, there are so many startups in the country, who are doing some phenomenal work, right from Swat robots building autonomous vehicles to just next time building brain computer interface, the first of its kind, but not many people even know about it. Then there are startups, like Log9 working on nanotech and so on and so forth. Does Khosla Labs also accept and incubate deep tech startups?
After I sort of left Aadhaar, I connected with Vinod, and we were keen to do something. And I was keen to do something in India. I didn't want to go back to Silicon Valley to do startups. I wanted to do something here and more socially relevant startups. Okay, I find that India has a lot of tough problems to solve, and youngsters can truly, sink their teeth into it and get involved in solving our own problems. So I wanted to take up those kind of problems. But I needed a sort of lab kind of environment to experiment with a few ideas. And Vinod had a lot of ideas. I had a bunch of ideas, and so on. And so we said, okay, let's create a lab where we can test out all this and maybe fund a few startups, and we find good ideas and good people that come together, maybe with some traction and so on. And that's what we did. So we started a payments company called NoPay, assisted payments, because at that time, smartphones were still not very large numbers, and connectivity was not that great. A lot of people, especially, they were excluded from the banking system and so on. So we said, let's make the bank, the Kirana shop, the bank in every village, in every town, so that people just walk up and do all their transactions. They open a bank account, send money to their family, whatever, buy products, get a loan, everything, get an insurance, whatever they want to do, deposit money, withdraw money from their bank, everything out of a Kirana store. And we built that. We connected to the banking system and offered this in, 23 states, hundreds of thousands of little shops in Kirana stores and medical stores and paint stores, hardware stores, and so on. We ran that. That was, again, for financial inclusion, to get the people connected to the financial systems, because banks, the branch-based banking is sort of exclusive for middle class. Okay, they don't necessarily encourage lower middle class or poorer people to come in there, and so on. So we felt that a more modest Kirana store, mom and pop store, is a better delivery point for banking. Okay, and a much lower cost. So one of the lowest cost delivery points. Okay, retail in India, 15 to 20 million retail stores is probably the lowest cost business point of service in India. So we did that. That led us to, we figured out that the banks have poor systems, very clunky systems. And so we built a brand new digital platform for lending and for financial product distribution and so on. So that was another company called Trustt, which I think you referred to. And Trustt is doing a lot of very interesting work in AI and so on right now. We can come to that if you want to talk about AI at some point in time, generative AI in particular. And we also started a company in the identity space because I felt that, while Aadhaar provided identity as a service at the national level, still to integrate with Aadhaar as a small startup or as a bank or some entity still there was a bit of a gap. So we provided products and services to provide KYC services, VSIP, video ID KYC, and many other services, e-sign and so on and so forth. All these document signing and identity related products. A company was created called Verify Digital. So created a few companies, but I got super busy with so many tracks. I was on the board of HDFC Bank. I'm doing at least 10 different tracks, 10BedICU that you mentioned, and so on. So I decided I'm not going to create more companies. I'm just going to continue to whatever chairs of the few companies that were there. But I do interact with entrepreneurs who come looking for help or input on their ideas or even on execution issues. So I do give time to entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs who are trying to build a startup.
Srikanth, you spoke about Trust, using AI and Gen AI. How do you see the future of banking kind of unfolding? Because obviously, there's this. You mentioned, that the branch-based banking is something which is not for everyone at this point in time. I don't even remember when was the last time I actually stepped into a physical bank, thanks to UPI and things like that. So I think the future of banking itself is completely upending, and how do you see this? So far, things have been pretty much centralized, but now there is this other side, which has gotten, quite a lot of negative press, blockchain, cryptocurrencies and virtual, this thing, because of, I think the way the entrepreneurs kind of, shaped what tried to kind of, juice out the early, this thing from, things like, NFTs and virtual currencies and stuff like that. So how do you think that, the future of finance gonna link with maybe things like blockchain and cryptocurrency? Because there was this report which I had read in 2021, which was created by Deloitte. That report claimed that in the next possibly like a 10 years odd framework, that fiat would be replaced by cryptocurrencies. And yes, so far, what we know of the financial systems are that they're very top-down, centralized, hierarchically. While as these blockchain-based systems, they've got so many interesting ethos. The decentralization, the transparency part of it, the openness, and things like that. How do you see the future of finance linking with blockchain and cryptocurrency? And maybe you can also talk about trust with your AI and Gen AI.
I think cryptocurrencies, the Satoshi's paper on Bitcoin was, I think, brilliant. It's a very elegant solution to the problem of decentralized finance and non-fiat currencies to create trust in an untrusted network. If you assume that the internet is untrusted and there are, bad actors there, how do you carry out trusted financial transactions? That's the problem he solved in a very elegant way. Well, some parts were not that elegant. The proof of work and so on was not wonderful in my mind. But he solved the Byzantine general's problem of decentralization, where there's no central authority, fault tolerance. The system had to be fault tolerant to behave correctly, even if some participants were malicious and unreliable. And we need consensus, all register same. That's how the blockchains had to be in sync from inception. So the Byzantine general's problem, the mathematical problem, was elegantly solved through the Bitcoin system that he came up with. So it was definitely a huge milestone in computing, in cryptocurrencies, in decentralization, in economics, in so many different ways. Okay, and it got a lot of people excited. I think the problem, unfortunately, was the way they went about it. The cryptocurrency world went head on against the establishment. Okay, so they wanted more of a revolution to overthrow fiat currencies and create a distributed, decentralized new currency, which is always hard to do. Okay, as opposed to a inclusive mechanism that built on top of existing systems. Okay, if you take the central bank, take on the central banks everywhere in the world, you take on the banking system everywhere in the world, and you take on the fiat currencies everywhere in the world, you're pretty much taking on the financial network that has been built over hundreds of years, right? And I don't think the whole system is going to roll over because there's a new algorithm that's elegant. Okay, and you saw that pushback come in a massive way. Right. Of course, it took a little bit of time before the systems responded to it in that way. But also there was, Sam Bankman-Fried and his dubious methods of running his company sort of really discredited the movement in some sense. I mean, it seemed initially holier than thou. And then, after that SBF incident, everybody, okay, one more scam became sort of, large number of people felt that way, unfortunately, for the cryptocurrency world. But the idea of the blockchain is still very strong. The idea of decentralization, the idea of tokenization of assets, very, very powerful idea, right? Imagine you can tokenize anything, land, properties, cars, whatever, gold, and so on. You'll be able to trade much more easily. Today, it's very hard for an Indian investor to trade on assets in the United States. You have to go through all kinds of silly hops. Right? Imagine if it is tokenized. All these digital tokens can be traded anywhere, like we were trading cryptocurrencies. Right? At least some companies used to do that and so on. So, but I like Nandan Nilekani's idea on the Finternet. I don't know if you read his paper on the Finternet. That is an idea which has taken some of these strong points of the cryptocurrency and blockchain world, especially of tokenization, of using blockchains, of multiple chains coexisting, but it's married it with the existing system of banking and central banks and the existing fiat currencies. You can tokenize all of them, including the fiat currencies, right? So it's a more inclusive approach, and I like those approaches more. You take everybody along. You don't break down existing systems and replace it en masse with new systems. Okay, it ain't that bad, right? So I like Nandan's approach. I mean, it was Nandan and the president of the Bank of International Settlements, the granddaddy of central banks. They came together and launched it. And I think there was 3 central bankers there: Germany, South Korea, and I think Taiwan or some other country. 3 central bankers were there at the launch of the Finternet paper, if I'm not mistaken. And so I like Nandan's idea that Pramod and Siddharth are working closely with him on, much more so because it's more practical to take people along, to build on top of our existing, strengths, as opposed to bringing systems down and saying, I'm going to replace it en masse with distributed currency, and fiat currencies are no good. That's a tough way to go about it.
Completely. You put it so beautifully. I hope that the Web3, blockchain, cryptocurrency, startups, entrepreneurs, listen to this and know where they went wrong. Because I think with the tech industry, right now, I think the young kids have this like, move fast, let's break everything attitude, and they don't understand the power of inclusivity, where take everyone along, even with, I mean, these big techs, trying to build artificial general intelligence, what they talk about, like, possibly maybe we'll be having machines that could be possibly maybe as intelligent as human beings, where it's a constant race, and there is maybe what I see over there is the lack of taking everybody along, because everything, while OpenAI says it's open source, I mean, they call themselves OpenAI, but everything is so closed, I mean, so I hope that, we build technology which is more open, and take everyone along, and that could be so, like, like a game changer, like what you guys have done, with the entire India digital stack. You mentioned about Trust, and then, also you built 10-bed ICU, then Open Health Network, and then you're leveraging, you mentioned that you leverage AI and Gen AI. Could you talk a little bit more about that, both in the
Sure.
financial section?
Sure.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, we've had banking systems working only for the middle class, rural dweller in India. Okay. They are not welcome in our branches. Because we want middle class people to come to our branches. Why? Because their savings account, their accounts don't keep much money. They don't have much money to keep. Hence, it's not worth the pain of giving them an account with the core banking system and all the other things that you have to do to support it. Of course, thanks to Prime Minister Modi and the big push on Jan Dhan Yojana, a lot of things got done. Okay, it was a confluence of the trinity of Aadhaar, mobile, and Jan Dhan Yojana, the jam trinity that pushed and got bank accounts to a large number of people. I think almost the entire population, right? But until then, we didn't have, only, when some 17% of the country had bank accounts, or some ridiculously small number of people had bank accounts, right? So that was a huge step forward. But still, are all of these people, now that they have bank accounts, using it to, improve their lives? Are they getting the credit they need? Are they getting the savings products, that they need? Without branches in villages, are they able to bank? Are they smart enough to look at smartphones and deal with banking? All of these questions still remain. It's not a completely solved problem because we have given them bank accounts. They have financial inclusion completely, and they can better their lives using banking systems. That's not reality yet, right? So my thought was, what if I am a villager in whatever, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, wherever? I want to ask if I can get a buffalo in Canada, buffalo loan, from the bank. And I want that bank to answer to me in Kannada, okay, or Tamil or Hindi accurately, without any hallucination, from that particular bank. Tell me the benefits. Tell me what the interest rates are. Tell me, I will ask any question I want. Can you answer? Imagine I have a friend next to me who actually works at the bank. She is my neighbor, and I can go and ask her all these questions. And she tells me very accurately how to do this, how to go about getting a buffalo loan. Imagine banking became that way. Imagine all you needed is a smartphone. Your son might have a smartphone. He might be smart enough to deal with a smartphone. You're an older gentleman, whatever, right? And you're able to do this. You might be a lady, maybe even illiterate, as given the literacy rates and so on, and still be able to do banking. That is entirely possible with generative AI. So my idea when I saw this was, oh my God, now we can get through inclusion and get all our people to talk to their smartphones, to talk to their banks through the smartphone. I don't want to go there. I'm intimidated. I'm not welcome there. They look at me like, why are you here? Okay. But can I talk to them through my smartphone and get all the information I want? And then when I'm happy, I want to apply for that loan, talking to my smartphone. You ask me whatever you want. You want to know my name? You want to know my age? I will give you all that on my smartphone. You do KYC with Aadhaar on my smartphone. Can you give me the product? Can I get the money? Can I get the loan in my bank account? Can I use UPI? Can I withdraw it? Can I use it? All of these are possible, right? So we started building all that. It's called Trust GPT. We had a series of products. One is, we do language support about 8 languages. We do product discovery. That means you can ask for a loan, you can ask for an FD product, you can ask for a account opening, savings, current account, whatever. You can just talk, and then you can get it, the origination journeys, the actually fill out the forms, do the KYC, and get the product by just talking, okay, in your own language, and it will keep responding in your language. And lastly, customer support. Can you imagine? I have a problem. I'm from a village. I don't know how banking systems work, but I have a problem. I'm not able to withdraw my money, or some password reset has happened because I've tried it 3 times and now I don't know how my thing is locked, or whatever. So many problems can occur, and I'm sitting in a village. I don't know how the banking system works. I don't know how digital systems work. Can I talk to a customer service agent, which is an AI, which understands every conversation it has had with me, understands every product that I've used, every transaction that I've done? In that context, it answers me. Okay, I'm not urban elite who understands digital, who understands banking. I have a nuanced problem. Here, I have maybe a basic problem, but at my level, AI explained to me how to solve the problem step by step in my language, doable, right? So we're building all these products. We're building Trustt GPT products for banks, and now we're rolling it out in 4 different banks. They're very excited. They're super excited because they're going to attract a new clientele, which they have not been able to attract because they can't afford branches in every village. They can't afford relationship managers for every poor person. But we can indeed afford AI if it can accurately represent the bank, right, and deliver good services in local language to every Indian, right? So this is the dream of Trustt GPT.
How cool is that, Srikanth? Because this sounds so fascinating that, anyone sitting in any part of India, the most rural part, will be having inclusive financial opportunities through these Trustt GPT that you're talking about, through natural language. Whatever language that they speak, they'll be able to interact with this thing. How cool is that? I hope that this gets deployed, and I'm sure it'll change the face of India's financial inclusion.
There's another area in the healthcare area also. I'm working on generative AI tools. So the 10BedICU project started in April of 2021, in the middle of the Delta wave of COVID. Suddenly we peaked in our COVID cases, 7 million cases, April 21. And I was in my mother's house in Mysore, and I got a call from a guy in Bangalore, the affluent guy who runs a unicorn. He says, my aunt is going to die if you don't get her a ventilator bed by tonight. Right. So, of course, I drop everything and make calls for 2 hours and find something for her. Next day, same call by one of my product managers in one of our companies. And his 26-year-old brother in Tirupati, his SpO2 level was dropping, 76, and it was just dropping. He was going to die. So he needed a ventilator. So we said, whatever, we got that done and so on. 10 days in a row, I was just getting calls left, right, and center. And I was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. This is like people are like reeling under this pandemic. And then Dr. Sudarshan, who runs Karuna Trust in BRLs here in Karnataka, he said, Srikanth, you're only hearing about all this from the media about Bangalore and Mumbai and Delhi and places like that. In fact, in the smaller towns, it's worse because there are no ICUs. In the small towns and villages, there are no ICUs. In the Taluka hospitals of Karnataka, there were no ICUs. Only district hospitals had ICUs. So, the idea came that, okay, we should probably try and create ICUs in Taluka hospitals in government. And since I was used to working in government for 20 years, Aadhaar and E-Gov and all that stuff, I sort of knew how to go about it and started talking to different states. Telangana moved very fast. Okay, they moved very fast and they said, let's kick off, right? Let's do it right. And so started raising money, because it was going to cost about 50 lakhs to put up these 10-bed ICUs everywhere. So started raising money and started creating ICUs. And then we ran up, into a problem of not enough specialists in these smaller hospitals. So came up with this idea of tele-ICU, a tele-ICU hub in a medical college, government medical college, where specialists would help these patients in and around that medical college in about 4 districts around that. About 10 to 12 hospitals, we connected them on the cloud and started delivering tele-ICU services. And that helped a bit. But then still problems. Data entry is poor. but doctors and nurses don't have time to enter data. A lot of issues are coming up, and generative AI had kicked in by then. Okay, ChatGPT had come out, and I'd met Sam Altman, and so things had happened. And then we said, okay, there are many things that Gen AI can help in our government setup to improve healthcare delivery, especially critical care delivery. So we started working on various things. One is we said we completely eliminate typing from our EMR. We had created a EMR called CARE, which is created by one of India's most active open source communities. Okay, the Open Healthcare Network. And we said, let's eliminate typing. The doctor need not type, nurse need not type. They just need to take their smartphone when they do their rounds. They talk to the patient, they talk to the nurse, maybe dictate a few things. We will take care of the rest. Not just transcription, not just converting it to English. We will go and make sure that the right boxes are ticked, right drop downs are picked, the right ICD-11 codes are filled for disease types, the correct medicine, everything. And talk colloquially, talk in your own language. Okay. This is what we did, and it works. Okay, now it's being deployed in Kerala, it's been tested. Government of Karnataka is going to start doing a POC. Okay. Second is discharge summaries. We have written a tool that takes your entire EMR-based details. Okay, let's say you stayed in the ICU for 5 days. It will take your entire EMR, prescriptions, consultations, everything, procedures, everything was conducted, and give, let's say, a 400-word summary along with ICD-11 codes so that you can submit it to the insurance company for the claims processing in the format that's required. Okay, this we have done, and it's working beautifully. Okay, you can even take 10 years worth of data. ABDM, Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission allows for data movement with patient consent. So in the future, if I have longitudinal data about you, I can create a summary like no other doctor would. Nobody goes through all your records and figures out what has happened. Okay, AI will do it for us, right? So discharge summaries are the second tool. Third, we are able to capture the 5-para monitor reading that is showing up in the 10-bed ICU, temperature, pressure, BP, SpO2 levels, and so on. And using the vision models, we're able to extract the data without doing deep integration, HL7 integration. Right. So we have these cameras that we put in our ICUs for the tele-ICU requirement. And those cameras will capture the 5-para monitor of all the patients. We have 3 cameras. And right now they're extracting values automatically, and periodically it's happening. Right. So our cloud has the details, and our specialists can even see the time series on this data and how it's going. That is number 3. Number 4, we have built a nurse assistant tool. We have created ICU protocols for the 20 most common cases. And we have fed that through a RAG methodology, retrieval augmented generation methodology, into AI. And that's able to answer accurately. So if a nurse is saying, maybe she's staying in Tamil or Hindi or whatever, she's saying, I think I have a patient with septic shock, his BP is dropping, it's below 65, and nothing seems to work, he's crashing, he's going to die, there's no doctor here. They literally say things like that. And our AI responds. It'll say, you have to start with vasopressors, this mg, and so on. And then she'll come back 1 hour later, say, I tried vasopressor, it's not working, the BP is still not going up. And then it'll say, next, epinephrine at 0.3 mg at next level, tried out. With drug dosing information, it's responding in local language, using our protocols with no hallucination, right? Of course, these are all under test right now because we have to thoroughly test it. So all of these tools are being demonstrated at the United Nations Future of AI conference on Monday. This is tomorrow. And this is the excitement of what AI can do in healthcare. Okay, I am also in the Apex committee of the Government of India for creating centers of excellence in AI. Okay, it's a 1,000 crore project where we are choosing institutions on healthcare, in sustainable cities, and in agriculture. And again, phenomenal work happening on oral cancer detection, on breast cancer detection, on tuberculosis, all using AI. Okay, and a lot of these transformer-based architectures are doing incredibly well. So a lot of this is going to come out as DPGs in the country. And India is going to lead the way in creating amazing models to improve healthcare. And my focus is on government hospitals, because that's where the poor go to care. And we have to ensure that they get the best quality of care. Imagine the poorest Indian getting the best doctor in the world in seconds. Okay, it's doable. AI can indeed be trained to offer services. Of course, not in every aspect, but in many, many aspects, it will fill the gap and improve the systems in healthcare.
We can't. So very awesome, because I think the largest problem in India is, two things. One is basically the education in the healthcare, because it's the rich, the people who can afford and get the best class of education as well as healthcare. Then there's a certain class of people who are just, deprived completely, especially when it comes to healthcare. And you're saying, through these systems that we built, these Gen AI features such as Scribe, Discharge, Device Connect, and I think in the next few years, it's going to completely revolutionize healthcare. Because I speak to a lot of people who are in the healthcare space, and I always hear stories that, okay, we are developing this and it could come in the next few years. But here, what I'm hearing is that, it's already deployed.
It's happening.
Yeah.
We are in 210 hospitals across 10 states. We are already covered 23% of India's districts. And
awesome.
These solutions, by the way, there is no other solution, unfortunately. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough specialists to deliver critical care to rural areas. Okay, people rush to the city, and half of them die in the process when they're driving in an ambulance. If at all they can afford one. Right? This is the situation, and it's not an India only problem. I gave this talk in California. 70 doctors attended. They also have the same problem. Not enough specialists. Okay, I spoke in Germany. Same problem. Not enough specialists. We don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough. It takes 14 years to get train an intensivist. Okay. But we want that quality of care for everybody. We can't say, okay, you know what, the wealthy will get qualified intensivists, but the rest will not, right? So we need to solve the problem. And AI and the digital networks we're building in a DPG way, in creating digital public infrastructure way, in open source, will ensure that we give access to these kind of innovations to everybody.
More power to you, Srikanth. My last question to you. We live in an extremely competitive world, where there is so many challenges as well as so many opportunities. So it would be great if you can share a few advice for the youngsters, and as well as your moonshot. What comes next for you?
Well, we're probably in the best time to do startups. Okay, so many things are coming together beautifully. You have a fairly digital world that you can plug into. Okay, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a youngster wanting to innovate, create value, create products that transform the world, you have Gen AI. That's a new tool that's able to do so much. You have an environment where there are VCs and others who are supporting this entrepreneurial ecosystem. So I think this is one of the best times in history to be alive, to do a startup. Okay, that's number one. I would urge youngsters to focus on India problems. India is a growing economy. We are growing incredibly fast. We have a massive market. We have lots of challenges and problems to address. Okay, that's what I've focused on, and I encourage other youngsters to also focus on. I don't discourage them from looking at world problems and solving world problems, but I would encourage them to look at our own market, our own challenges, and try to solve them. The things that I usually look for in entrepreneurs, and what I would advise is, you have to get gritty and be persistent. Being, even stubborn and persistent is the number one quality that an entrepreneur needs. Okay, ideas are a dime a dozen. I don't find fault with many of the ideas that I find with youngsters, but I'm not sure they are gritty enough to take on and do the startup. Okay, because this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is a long game. You have to say, it's going to take me 10 years. A lot of youngsters get in thinking, you know what, in 2 years, I'll create a unicorn. I'll just sell and flip. Okay, if it's not a unicorn, it's okay. I'll create, I'll take a couple of $1 million and go do a bigger thing next, right? Bad idea. That way of thinking will only disappoint you. It's very few examples that are there that everybody looks for and said, that guy, WhatsApp became $1 billion company in no time. Those are the outliers. Most companies take about 10 years to create some value. Okay. So this is something that entrepreneurs should come in expecting, and also attention to detail. You know, our history shows amazing attention to detail. I go to temples like Belur, Alebid, and Somnathpur, and those carvings and those edifices we have created are such attention to detail. But a lot of newer products that I see, we don't see the same kind of, go the extra mile, cross the T, dot the I, make sure the product is perfect. I don't see enough of that. So attention to detail, go the extra mile, that is the scarce resource. The attention to detail and quality is the scarce resource now. We don't want more people saying, okay, I'll undercut the other guy by creating a cheaper product. That's not value enough. So I would say these are some thoughts I have when I talk to youngsters, when I encourage them to build companies. But these are some things that they should keep in mind to create successful companies with delivering huge value.
Right. Srikanth, thank you so much for taking time and being part of podcast and sharing your insights. And thank you for all that you've done, because I think, there are people, entrepreneurs who go for the $1 billion dream and, building out. But here you are, you have touched the billion lives, the values that you have created is intangible, it's touched everybody's life, and I hope there is more entrepreneurs such as yourself who change lives, because that's what matters in the long run. So thank you for doing that. And please keep on doing what you're doing. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. And until next time, see you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Really
All right.
appreciate this.
Thanks, Eddie.
Yeah,
it's great being at your podcast. Bye-bye.
Thank you.